Hey, Saints fans, let's go ahead and hop right into this. Let's take a look at the 2023 schedule for the Saints. So, we're going to start things off with the Titans, and did this last year. DA was a lot worse than I expected him to be, plus, they had injuries. It didn't go so well. Hopefully, it goes better this year. So, keep in mind, all of the predictions here are intentionally way too early, and we're being optimistic. If DA is a bad coach and they have tons of injuries again and so on and so forth, obviously things can change, but we're operating under the assumption that that's not going to be the case. He's at least going to be mediocre and they're going to have average injury luck. So, with that said, let's hop into the schedule. Game one is against the Tennessee Titans at home. I expect the Saints to win. Primary reason being neither of the Titans quarterbacks are very good. Their secondary can be thrown on even though their defense is solid. Their pass rush is pretty good. It's early in the season. I expect the Saints O line to be healthy. It's in New Orleans. It's the first game with their new quarterback. I think they're going to be hyped. I think the fans are going to be hyped. I think the fact that neither of the other, of the Titans quarterbacks are good, nor do they have any wide receivers, is going to matter. And I think they'll be able to get up by enough that it's going to mitigate Henry's impact on the game. So I have this as a win. Week two is at Carolina. I also have this as a win. It's probably going to be Young's first start, although if it's Dalton starting, then it's definitely should be a win. It would be embarrassing to lose that game, but if Bryce Young is starting, it should be an improved pass rush. And the Saints do have great coverage. And the Panthers are, they're just not overly flush with weapons, so I do not expect this to be a game where they should not be able to match the Saints score for score. The Saints should be able to score on them, especially with Derek Carr rather than Andy Dalton, with relative consistency. Even though it is a good defense, I would expect 20, 25 plus from the Saints, and I don't think the Panthers can get to that number without turnovers. First loss of the season is against Green Bay. Um, Reasoning for me is pretty simple. It's a game at the Packers. They actually have a pretty damn good roster. Aaron Rodgers' performance last year would make you think otherwise, but a lot of that was Aaron just wasn't good versus the Packers being bad. They still have a very good run game, which I expect them to fully rely upon. Watson is the freak of all freaks as far as wide receivers go. And also, there's the love factor. So there's not a lot of film on him, so you don't really know exactly what to game plan for on him. I do think he's going to be pretty good, and I think the weapons and the overall roster that they have, the style of football they'll be able to play, and it being at home, I do think this will be a game that the Saints will lose. They win, pleasant surprise, but it would be a surprise. So I fully expect them to lose this game. The Bucks are terrible. They're terrible at quarterback. Their O line is fairly meh. It's solid still, but it's fairly meh. And their secondary is barbecue chicken. Um, and they don't have the Tom Brady factor anymore. So Carlton Davis can't just sit there and grab and yank and hold and swat and do all the stuff that he wants to do and you know get away with everything because you're no longer having Tom Brady as your quarterback, so you don't get to operate with a completely different rule book than the rest of the league. So I fully expect the Saints to spank the Bucks in New Orleans. Week 5 is at New England. I also have that as a win. Mac Jones isn't good. Bill Belichick is a great coach. They have a very good defense. I could see them giving the Saints offense problems. But I think the Saints defense will give their offense more problems than their defense will give the Saints offense problems. I think the Saints are more likely to force turnovers than the Pats defense is to force turnovers. And at the end of the day, I expect the Saints to win this game because I think they'll be able to sustain enough offense, and just the Pats do not have enough weapons to really challenge what the Saints are going to want to try to do on defense. Um, the Saints always have at least one stupid loss a year, and this is my stupid loss. Ironically, the facepalm here is for the Texans, but it really should be for the Saints. There's no football reason why the Saints should lose this game. The Texans don't have a ton of weapons. They have a young quarterback. Their defense is their O line is not great, although Tunsil's obviously solid, but it's not great. Like there's nothing here that says they should beat the Saints. They're totally going to beat the Saints. Plus, I believe Adams going to this game, so that's like an instant win for the opposition. I'm half kidding on that. Um, but like jokes aside, like it's Stroud's first game. I think he's, Saints rookie quarterbacks, mobile quarterbacks. You put all those things together, dumb games they have no business losing. It would be the most Saints thing ever for them to lose this game. And then also against the Jags in Week 7, I also expect a loss. Not only is it the coach they should have hired, Mr. Zoom interview himself, Doug Peterson. It's the best quarterback they'll play on the schedule all year is Trevor Lawrence. The Jags have weapons. They have a receiving core that I think can challenge the Saints secondary. They have some ability to run. They have a solid O line. They have a good pass rush. They have the elements that you need to be able to give the Saints some problems. And they have a far better coach who's a very, very good game planner. So I fully expect the Saints to lose this game. Week 8 at the Colts, I expect the Saints to win. Richardson is a bonkers talent. As far as just checking boxes and looking at gifts, probably the most talented guy at the quarterback position, not named Patrick Mahomes, that we've seen since Cam Newton. Talented. He's not as raw. Like people try to make it out like he's like literally a running back trying to play quarterback. He's not that raw. But for NFL reads and in particular to deal with some of the stuff I fully expect the Saints to do to him, plus the Colts' lack of top end receivers, um, I don't think he'll have the ability to singularly win the game for them. Um, and I think the Saints defense will be able to do enough, and the Saints offense shouldn't have too much difficulty scoring on the Colts. I think it'll help them put the game away. But Taylor scares me. He's crazy talented. The Saints' run defense was bad last year. Taylor plus Richardson, as far as like the run element, there's some scary elements there. So if they're going to lose the game, I fully expect to be on the back of those two guys. Next on the list are the Chicago Bears. Loss. Why? Dia can't stop running quarterbacks. Fields is pretty much this side of Lamar Jackson. He's the best mobile, like running quarterback in the league. They have a quietly, I think, much better roster. I think Moore is going to make a big difference for Fields as a thrower. It's a bit of a trap game. You're coming off of those back-to-back-to-back AFC South opponents. You're facing the Bears at home. You don't think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be surprising. I could absolutely see them catching the Saints slipping and Fields literally, pun intended, having a field day all over the Saints secondary. I do, however, see them beating the Vikings. I think the Vikings are getting massively overhyped. Um, I'm not even going to bring up, Mr. Two First being over there because this is midway through the season, so he'll be on IR by now. The Saints should be able to score them consistently. Their secondary isn't great. They don't have a great pass rush situation. Their offense is solid, but it's still Kirk Cousins, and I do think the Saints are going to have an improved pass rush this year. And while Justin Jefferson is a absolute stud, the Saints really should have beaten them last year, and last year's Vikings, they are such a great example of what regression to the mean really is supposed to mean. They won so many close games they had absolutely no business winning, and they weren't nearly as good as their record says they were last year, and I think that they are going to take a step or two backwards. So I do actually see the Saints beating them. The Saints last year, they lost the bye. They lost pretty much anything that had to do with preparation and coordination and leadership because they had none of those. This year it's going to be neutral. I actually really like the placement of this bye. Week 11, 12, right around 10, 11, 12, right around in that range is really where I'd like to have the bye. It lets you build a rhythm, get an identity, get going as a team, gives you that nice late but not too late break, get healthy, make a few corrections, schematically and within the team, and then gives you time to manifest those corrections and hopefully hit the end of the season running, go on a win streak, and be good going into the playoffs hypothetically. So just as far as placement, great spot for the bye. Week 12 at Atlanta. I don't want to pick the stupid drunk birds to win, but I'm gonna pick the stupid drunk birds to win because I think that they're going to be able to run on the Saints. I don't think their defense is going to even be good, but I think it'll be better. And the Saints have one dumb game against the Falcons pretty much every year. And this is coming right off a bye. DA, not a disciplinarian, not a hyper detailed guy, not a great leader. I expect his team to come out of the bye flat. And again, it's the Falcons. Saints do dumb things in rivalry games, and so I think they win a stupid game they have no business losing. Loss. The Lions, I think, had a phenomenal offseason. I think they added a ton of really good players. I think Gibbs is going to do horrible things to the Saints defense. This is still a slow defense. They're fairly slow in the secondary. They're pretty slow up front. Fauski's the only guy in the front seven who really has like top level speed. Demario Davis used to, but that was 3 years ago. He's not that guy anymore. I think Johnson's one of the best creative minds in the NFL. I totally agree with Adam from the Saints Warrior podcast. We would love to have him as our coach next year. I think this is going to be his audition. And two guys I would rather have as the head coach for the Saints, Johnson or Dan Campbell. I see the Lions getting the win simply because I think they're the better team. But again, could the Saints win? Yes. Panthers, really, honestly, I genuinely think this game boils down to if you stop the Panthers' pass rush, you win the game. They have a good secondary. They don't have an amazing secondary. Their defense is solid, but it's not overwhelming. The Saints have good speed. Derek Carr throws a great deep ball. The Saints should have the ability to run the ball. Kamara should be back and in rhythm at this point. Like they just don't have a lot of weapons, and it's in the dome. I think the Saints should have every ability to do a lot of damage to the Panthers and win this game. Same thing with the Giants. It's at home. We're at a back-to-back-to-back home. They have the better coach. They have the must-worst quarterback. I do think Daniel Jones will be affected by the dome. The dome always affects teams, but when the Saints are good and above 500, they play better. But to me, the one player that's the biggest key, pun intended, is Fauski. I think having a guy in the front seven, and especially in the front four, who has the type of instant acceleration, quickness, speed, etc. that he has, as well as his lateral agility, his ability to chase guys down, he's the key to being able to mitigate Jones' ability to run. And if you can mitigate Jones' ability to run, he is not a good NFL quarterback. If you let him run and pass only when he has to, with good coaching, which Daboll clearly gave him last year, he can at least be a mild irritant. They can win a playoff game, again, against total frauds, but still, it can happen. The Giants were a better team than the Saints last year, and the Saints were 3 or 4 times more talented than them. It shows you the value of coaching. The Rams game, number one, I'm going to be at this game, so I'm not picking them to lose because that would fucking suck. Also, I think this roster is cheeks, outside of Aaron Donald. I'm not sure. I mean, I'd have to really look at it, but off the top of the head, I can't think of one player other than Aaron Donald where I'd be like, ooh, give me him from this roster. He is a huge threat. He can single-handedly flip games. A lot of this will come down to health, but again, we're operating under the assumption that we have at least average injury health here. So if the Saints' offensive line isn't devastated, I don't think Donald single-handedly wins the game. And if he doesn't, I think the Saints should win and win fairly comfortably. Week 17 at the Bucks. Again, they're terrible. Bad quarterback. Meh O-line. Bad in the secondary. Same as before. It's not going to be any different in Tampa. Yes, it's a division game, but they really suck. And if the Saints lose to Tampa in either of these games, they should be embarrassed. And the final game of the year is the Falcons. Here's why the Saints are winning. 28-3 happened. Your quarterbacks stink. Your secondary is average at best. I repeat, 28-3 happened. We're in the dome. And I think the Saints will be playing for a playoff spot and potentially playoff seeding in the NFC in this game, so they will have a reason to want to beat the Falcons at home, and the Falcons probably will not have anything to play for at this point in time, and so I do fully expect for the Saints to win. So that is the Saints season. I am predicting a 11-6 record. Again, this is all with the assumption that DA is at least average as a coach for the year, and they have at least average injury luck. If neither of those things happen, I could see them winning 5 games. Like if DA is if he regresses as a coach rather than gets better from last year, like I could easily see them winning 5 or 6 games, even with what projects to be a soft schedule. They could lose one of the Bucks games, they could lose one of the Falcons games, they could lose both Panther games, they could lose against the Giants, the Vikings, the Rams, the Packers, like some of which are teams I already have them losing against, but like they could easily win a lot of these games. They could also easily lose a lot of these games. They have not earned the they haven't earned the right to just assume they're going to be good under this staff and with this group of guys. But I do think they're going to win 10, 11 games, so that's what I have them at. If you don't agree on any of these picks or don't agree in general, feel free to go hop in the comment section and tell me why you don't agree, and happy to chat it out with you. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, subscribe, share it with friends, help the channel out. And if you didn't, at least comment and tell me how much you hate my content so that other people can see it and they can hate it too. Share the misery.